Brother, all good. I don't even want to say what I had for lunch because it's kind of embarrassing, but it was a rushed one. I'll just say that. But hey, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, Brady, thank you so much for being here, Brady. I appreciate it. Man, I want to just introduce you to the Seven Eagle Academy student body here, right? So we're looking at a bunch of transitioning service members, couple of veterans, and a couple of military spouses. Absolutely amazing group this week, and want to introduce you to the audience as well. So just to give you guys an idea, Brady's got account executive experience, sales director experience. He worked at Rocket Lawyer for a few years. Now he's the director of GTM strategy at Elite Tech Install. And this guy's just got probably 10 times more experience than most of us on this call on the civilian side of the house doing sales and strategy and everything like that. But this guy's got 30 minutes and he's got one heck of a story to tell you. So I'm going to shut up and let him get cracking to it. So Brady, man, hit me with that fire that you hit me with the other day that really got me excited about having you be a part of this academy.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. That was quite the introduction. No pressure, but I'll do my best to live up to it. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Yeah, my name is Brady Del Pozzo. I'm originally from Western New York, and I've been in the Bay Area for about the last 11 or so years. And so first and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you, for your service. I don't personally have any military experience myself, but I have great admiration and respect for each and every one of you. So thank you for your service, and obviously thank you so much for having me today. Yeah, to just kind of dive right into it. So yeah, I've been in the tech business sales world for about the last 12 or so years. Started my career in financial consulting in Boston, and then pivoted to software sales early mid 20s and moved out to the Bay Area. So aside from my company, I really have a passion for building and creating and leading high performing teams. I am somebody who, regardless of the company that I'm at, I firmly believe that if you take care of your employees, that's going to trickle down to your customers. And so, I have a big passion for finding out how to bring the best out of people, getting to know them on a personal level, and really just trying to understand what's going to set everybody up for success long term. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that we've got here with Elite Tech Install. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory on kind of where we fit into the equation of what we're doing. And then, of course, would love any questions at the end as it pertains to either interest in the role or just general questions about sales and my career as well. So Elite Tech Install. So what we do is we primarily are providing professional services, professional installation services for telematics. Now, what are telematics? Some of you may know. For me, I was relatively new to this a few years back. So telematics is kind of an all-encompassing term that primarily, relates to any technology that's going to go into a commercial vehicle. Now, a little bit of a backstory. So about back in 2014. Some of you may have heard comedian Tracy Morgan was unfortunately involved in a pretty serious car accident. And when they started doing an investigation, they realized that his convoy, or his vehicle, if you will, was actually hit by a Walmart truck. And this Walmart employee, unfortunately, had been driving for over 24 hours straight and was exhausted, and basically essentially fell asleep at the wheel and ran into Tracy Morgan's car, and Tracy Morgan was almost killed. Now, a few things came from that. First and foremost, obviously there was a massive investigation as to how is this person, able, especially to call a company like Walmart, right? How is this person able to drive in a commercial vehicle, and I'm talking a big, 18-wheeler for 24 hours without sleeping, right? And so, out of this, the federal government came out with a mandate that said, hey, if you are driving a truck or any truck in America that goes more than 100 miles a day, they have to have what's called an electronic logging device. It's basically a fancy GPS, so that now we can start to track how far these folks are driving on a daily basis, because the result is, people are unfortunately getting into accidents. There's sometimes there's death, there's, injury. So the government said, hey, we can't have folks logging their hours by pen and paper anymore. It's the 21st century. We've got to do better. Right. So they came out with this electronic logging device, federal mandates. They announced it in 2015. Went into effect until in 2017, and then folks in these large fleets, they had until about 2019 to be compliant. So born out of that, there's a few companies that whose products really fit into this market. One that we primarily are installing for is a company called Samsara, and Samsara is one of the leaders in the space. They are, selling the technology in terms of electronic logging devices, and also they're selling dash cameras. Now, the cool thing about dash cameras is that when it comes to making the road safer, when it comes to saving lives, these dash cameras are really doing even more, I would say, than the electronic logging devices or the GPSs, because the technology that they've got is pretty cool. And then there's a few functions. I'll talk about just two of them. Um, Essentially, what they have is a dash camera that is a pretty standard dash camera. I'm sure we've all heard of them. But what it does is it has an outward-facing camera and an inward-facing camera. And for an outward-facing camera, if a driver is going down the road and they're involved in a collision, then obviously now there's footage of it. And in a past life, when we didn't have this technology, statistically, 9 times out of 10, or the vast majority of the time, if a commercial driver was involved in an accident, they were going to get blamed regardless, because a lot of people would say, hey, that truck hit me. That truck has blind spots. And it's easy to say, hey, it was the truck's fault, right? The other thing, too, is that a lot of these companies, it was just easier for them to say, hey, you know what? Maybe it wasn't our employee's fault. Maybe it was just pay the person, have them sign something, and we want it to just go away, right? So companies were shelling out millions and millions and millions of dollars for accidents that may not have been their driver's fault. To make matters worse, drivers and employees were also, in some cases, losing their jobs because if an accident was severe enough, they felt like they had to take, more precautions. And in some instances, drivers were losing their jobs and it wasn't their fault. So fast forward to now, we've got these outward-facing dash cameras, and those can be installed so that if and when there is a collision on the road, obviously if it's the driver's fault, now there's at least documentation of it. But for all those instances in which it's not the driver's fault, they're now being exonerated, and companies who were, unfairly paying out claims in the past, now they're not having to do so. So these cameras, definitely are making a big impact just to help people, maintain their jobs, to make sure that, the fault is being properly placed. But the even crazier part is if you look at the inward-facing dash camera, it actually has the ability to kind of map out the driver's face. And if the driver starts to fall asleep, or if their head starts to tilt like this, it's going to beep. Now, my CEO at Elite Tech Install, he, before starting the company, was actually a VP of Fleet and Oilfield Services, and they found themselves in exactly this position. They had a driver who was on the road. He started to fall asleep at the wheel, and it beeped. It woke him up, and he was able to be pulled off the road, and they gave him an extra couple days of rest. He wasn't fired. He wasn't reprimanded, but you could argue that at least one life was saved on that day, because before this technology, who knows what could have happened? He could have just fallen asleep at the wheel. And obviously, that can lead to a not good outcome. So, when we're installing this technology, we really like to keep the big picture in mind. We are installing technology that's going to make the road safer. We're installing technology that's going to help exonerate innocent employees. And so really every day what we do is we get to go on site. We get to meet folks from all over the country. Our installation projects can take us to all 50 states. We get projects in Alaska. We get projects that are in Hawaii. It's funny enough, when we have a project in Hawaii, we don't usually have to, ask for volunteers. People usually are the first to sign up. But the cool thing about this job is that, not only are we installing technology that's life-saving, but there's a travel component of it. You can travel as much or as little as you would like to. And really for us, what we're looking for are professional folks that have technical expertise and are able to do installs. Every single person on this call is more than overqualified when it comes to professionalism. That is not even a concern in my mind. But really what we're looking for are folks that are either, interested in this type of work, have some experience with 12-volt installs, anything mechanical, electrical. If you've got technical expertise, if you've got an electrical background, I definitely do not. So when I look at the installation guides and the schematics, it's like another language to me. But folks that have this technical expertise, I've been told that the installs themselves are very straightforward. It's nothing that's going to trip you up or that's overly complex. Really what we're solving for is just professional folks that have an interest in installing and also don't mind a little bit of travel. But as I mentioned, the travel component of it, can really be as much or as little as you would like. I'm happy to kind of chat through that on further conversations. But just to kind of kick us off, that's it at a high level. Tyler, anything I missed or anything that any questions that have come up?
Man, I like that's a pretty good overview. Just want to drop it for you guys. If you have any questions for Brady throughout this, just throw your hand up. We'll pause chatting here and call on you to get your question answered. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on is Brady's company is actively hiring people that are professional and have a basic understanding of technology, technical installs, anything like that. So if you guys are looking for tech and the type of job that can pay you six figures to have a pretty autonomous role and install tech, like throw up a question, throw a one in the chat or an emoji, something like that, and chat with Brady because this is a dude that can get you connected with a cool job. So with that said, could you tell us while we wait for, because I'm sure somebody's out there, sometimes they're a little bit shy, but could you tell us about sort of like the either a day or a week in the life of one of your technicians?
Yeah, absolutely. So, typically when we're first starting off a project, we're going to map out. So each installation is a little bit different. Now, sometimes because we're installing in vehicles, obviously vehicles move, and so when we're scoping out a project, the thing that we want to best understand is where are these vehicles? Are they all within a city? Are they all within a state? We do a lot of work for public sector teams. And obviously, when you're installing for, the city of Kissimmee, Florida, all those assets are going to be within the city limits, right? Now, most of the projects we're doing are nationwide. So we've had projects that have started in California and they've ended in Maine, and we'll have technicians who will travel the entire route. Now, just to set the stage here, no one is expecting or asking anybody to be on a route that is the entire country. What we all will also do is we'll kind of carve it up regionally. So if you're in Atlanta, we might have you on a route that's in Georgia and Tennessee and maybe Alabama. But the goal is that we want to, obviously understand how much or how little you're open to traveling. Obviously, the more you're open to traveling, the more opportunities there are. But there's definitely not a minimum requirement or an expectation. For us, it's finding the right people and putting them in the right place to be successful. But the first part of it is we're going to make sure we understand where is this job taking us to geographically, and then also what are we installing. Now, typically, once we're on site, the first couple of days of the project are really for us to get onboarded and kind of ramped up. Obviously, we're going to want to, if we haven't been on site with the client yet, we want to make sure we're better understanding the client's expectations. We're going to want to make sure that we have the timelines agreed to. We obviously want to get up and running with installs. And the first couple of days are really for us to see, is there anything unforeseen or anything that we may have not predicted or gotten out in front of that we want to make sure that we are, aligning with the client on. And the first couple of days are so important because 9 times out of 10, if there's something unforeseen that we didn't account for, that's when it's going to come up. And it's a really good time to iron those details out, build rapport, with the client itself, and obviously make, in my role, to make sure the technicians are set up for success, right? So the first couple of days, it's kind of we're all getting to know each other. And then usually about, by the end of day 2, beginning of day 3, that's when everyone's got a good feel for, what we're doing. We've got a good feel for the flow of vehicles, whether the vehicles are coming to us or whether we're having to go to them in different locations throughout the town. But either way, once we're kind of off and running that first week, a lot of it is just going to be, doing installs on your own time. Now, we will have kind of a daily set target or expectation. But again, we want to make sure that everybody is set up for success, right? Sometimes the client will say, hey, I can't get that many vehicles available to you. Sometimes the technician will say, hey, something or unforeseen came up and it inhibited my ability to get, 10 done versus 9. But either way, my job is to support you and to make sure that you're set up for success. I firmly believe that leadership is there to serve their employees, not the other way around. So, my job is basically to make sure to not only sell the project, but to make sure that the project is successful. So, for the folks that are installing, once we're up and running after the first couple days, the next couple weeks of the project will largely just be going on site each day and making sure the installs are done. But from there, if we've set you up the right way, it should be pretty straightforward. There shouldn't be any hiccups that come up. And then you're just in a really good rhythm and you're installing kind of on your own time. More often than not, you're going to be on site with at least a couple other folks. So you're not going to be there by yourself. More often than not, folks from the client will be there. If we're installing in maybe a bay or if we're installing on a yard, there's always going to be employees around. So, we'll have lunch with the clients. We'll have, somebody will get coffee each day, usually me. And so the clients are pretty excited to have us there. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're getting the job done and we're professional. But, usually the first couple days when we're feeling everybody out, past that, it's actually a very pleasant experience. When we're on site with the clients, they'll make sure that we feel welcome. I will obviously make sure you're set up for success. But from there, it's like Tyler said, it's very autonomous. We're not going to get in your way. All I want to do is make sure you're set up for success. And once you demonstrate that you've got a good understanding and you're in a good spot and you're kind of just firing on all cylinders, then my job is to take a step back and say, hey, if you need me, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to let you do your thing.
Yeah, awesome. Let's grab James's question. What you got, James?
Sorry, I didn't even realize I raised my hand. I apologize.
No worries.
Question then?
No question.
All right, sweet. Anybody else got questions for Brady?
I was just looking at the chat. I actually, so I was born in Poughkeepsie, actually. And we've got very good friends from Wappingers Falls. And I actually would have gone to Arlington High School had we stayed down there. But I grew up in Rochester, New York. So I saw somebody mentioned in the chat. So small world.
Awesome. Richard, what you got, brother?
Hi, thanks. So you say there's a lot of travel. So I'm looking at your website here. It looks like you guys have a lot of locations around. With me being in South Carolina and there's no locations in this state, I'm assuming I would have to move to one of the places with a location.
No. So great question. So the good thing about this job is that you can live wherever you want. We will travel technicians into a new area for a project. So we will actually pay you for each day that you're traveling while on a project. Now, keep in mind, if we've got a project that's going to take place in Texas, you might say, hey, yep, I will travel to Texas and I'll do the project within Texas and I'll go back home to South Carolina. You might also say, you know what, I don't want to leave, the Carolinas, or the furthest I'll go west is maybe Alabama, or the furthest north I'll go is Virginia. But that's good for us to know, because ultimately we want to make sure that we, one, have a good understanding of how far folks are willing to travel or how often they're willing to travel. But a lot of the companies that we'll work with will also have a regional presence. And so we might have a company where it's, hey, we're doing the city of Columbia, South Carolina. We're doing all of their assets. So that would be a perfect project for you. Or, hey, we've got a project that's underway right now, and it's 4 different locations in North Carolina. So you might say, hey, that's a project I'm willing to take on. You might not want to go all the way to California and do a project in San Diego, but if you do, great. We'll make sure we pay for you to travel out there. But again, there's no expectation in terms of where you want to work, and there's definitely not an expectation that you've got to pick up and move. The great part about this is that I live in the Bay Area, but I am regularly doing projects or on site in other parts of the country, and so we're all kind of have that in common.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
What about a good question came in the chat from Zachary? What are the technicians doing when they are not traveling?
Great question. So a lot of the technicians that we work with, either are taking time off. I guess it would depend on the technician. We've got a lot of folks that are on the road, pretty much all year. So if there's ever a week that there's some downtime, we want to obviously give them some rest. Some of our technicians will say, hey, like, put me on the next project starting the following Monday. Again, that's not the expectation, but we do have a lot of folks that will say, hey, I pretty much, aside from taking some time off for the holidays and taking off, holidays during the year, I'm happy to be installing pretty much full time, right? But I would say they obviously have some downtime if they want to take some R&R. The other thing is that if we don't have a project, so for example, if someone says, hey, I only want to do a project in South Carolina, if there's not a project that we've got in South Carolina, There's other, companies in our network that they can install for. It's a pretty small industry. If we've got somebody who's a really skilled technician and we might not have a project for them right this second, but there's another, network or organization that does, we can always introduce them. Obviously, our hope is that folks are going to want to, install for us as much as possible. But, I'm never going to say, hey, you can only install for us. And, if we don't have any work, you're going to suffer, because ultimately that wouldn't be doing right by us. So I think a lot of it is just understanding, upfront your expectations, how many days you'd like to be installing, how far you would like to travel. There's no wrong answers. We just want to get a really good sense of kind of where everybody's at, and obviously make sure that this is a role that you're interested in.
Awesome. Pang, what question you got?
I have two questions. Like you traveling, you pay for the hotel fee or living fee, or how you guys pay for it? And another question is like how the one we installing, how you guys deliver, or like you guys just give to the people who will be technician and then just send to there, or like how it was working for like different region.
Yeah, so the first part of that is yes. So there is so we are paying for certain elements. I wouldn't say there's you're getting all of your travel covered, but there is a stipend portion of it for traveling, and that's pretty much standard across the industry. There's usually a travel stipend for gas, for lodging, and then obviously we're paying you a per day rate, and then also paying for days when you're traveling and not installing. So all of that, happy to discuss in further detail to make sure that the financials line up. But high level, yes, there is a stipend when traveling. And then the second part of your question, I didn't quite catch the last part. Would you mind repeating it?
The second part is so I live in the New York, but you currently in the like San Francisco or CA, something like that. So how the tool I will get and to get installed like somewhere in the North Carolina or somewhere in like New Jersey or something like that. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, in terms of training.
Yeah. It's like kind of the job. Like you said you have a project in the New Jersey, but I live in the New York region, so I'm close to that and I can
Yep.
fix that. But the thing is, I don't have any tool for the fitting.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So
So we would be providing a kit of tools for you to use. If you're, say you're installing just for a couple of weeks, we'd obviously allow you to use the tools. If you're installing for a longer period of time, probably just say, hey, these are yours now. The only thing that we would ask is that you show up with the right PPE. We could talk about how we would, if we've got recommendations for what to get, but it's essentially just steel-toed boots, which are pretty standard. You can get them at any hardware store, a high-vis reflective vest, and then goggles. I'd say most, if not all projects, if you've got steel-toed boots and a vest, you're in really good shape. Each client will tell us if they've got specific PPE requirements. So far, I haven't come across any projects where a hard hat was required, but I would say definitely showing up with at least the boots and the vest, and then obviously protective eyewear is always a good thing to have on you. And then, yeah, in terms of tools, we would make sure that you had tools, so no issues there.
Awesome. John Cavaluzzi. What's up?
Hello, Brady. Thanks for coming on with us today. I have a quick question for you, sir. I noticed on your website you have looks like opportunities in, I would assume, Detroit, Michigan. Do you have anything in southwestern Michigan, or is Detroit kind of like your hub for the state of Michigan, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I would say so the locations on our website are going to be where we've got folks where that's their home base or where they live, if you will. But, in any given project, our installer in Detroit could be in Ohio, or they could be in North Carolina, and then we could have them staffed on a project, and then the next day we could get a request for a project in Detroit, at which point obviously you'd be a perfect fit. So I would say the map itself can be a little misleading just because that's where we've got a footprint. But ultimately, our technicians in California might be in Texas just because they're constantly moving around. So I would say even if you live somewhere where it looks like we already have a presence, for us, there's really no such thing as having too many folks, because again, a lot of those people are traveling regularly, and then that map can change around pretty quickly. So for us, wherever you live is definitely not an issue. Now, for me, I live in the Bay Area. We don't get a ton of projects right in the Bay Area just by the nature of the work we do. But if you're anywhere in the Southeast, if you're in the Midwest, Texas, there's a lot of vehicles. Obviously, Florida, we have a lot of projects. I'd say pretty much anything east of the Rockies. Obviously, California is a big state, so we do have projects up and down California. But if you're living, anywhere east of the Rockies, I'd say that puts you in a good place. But by no way, shape, or form is it inhibited. Is this inhibitive of you saying, "Hey, I live in one state versus another"?
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Chris
Thank you.
Banzet.
Hey, sorry about my voice. I don't always sound like this. We have a big sickness going on. I was bedridden all weekend. So,
Jeez, I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, no, that's all right. So I'm in near Destin, Florida. And
Yep.
so you said you had a lot of business projects going on in Florida. I'd love to, just discuss further and just see, what that looks like. And so I have a radio background in terms of technology, and I'm just a redneck. I build stuff since I was like 18. My first job was building houses, so I can probably do just about anything and learn just about anything. So I'd love to get connect with you and just see, what the opportunity is for this particular region. Because for me specifically, I'm not looking to travel like all over the country, but if there's like a lot of work, particularly in my region, I might be open to that. And so, just love to connect with you and talk more.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'd love to. I'll make sure you get my contact information. And I would say it's funny if you've been building things all your life, and if you've got a radio background, and if you're somebody who just likes to tinker with different pieces of equipment, you're exactly who we're looking for. I mean, your background, your expertise, that's exactly who we're looking for. Folks that have that experience and you have that natural curiosity about working with these types of pieces of equipment. So yeah, that sounds great. Florida, yes, just happens to be one of the areas and one of the regions where we get a lot of work. And so yeah, I'd say the Southeast in general, the Carolinas, the Midwest, Texas, obviously. So yeah, I would love to chat, and I'm really grateful for you reaching out.
And I just want you to know you had me at tools. I'm a redneck. I love tools, and so I'm eager to see what kind of tools we're talking about here.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll have to set you up with my colleague who's the technical expert, and he's got a full kit of everything you could ever possibly want. So you guys will have a lot to chat about.
Hey Brady, Chris is one of those dudes that like brings kind of an elite blend of like technical expertise and leadership. So if you get that dude on your team, you're gonna be rocking and rolling. Sorry, little plug for one of our longtime students, Chris.
No, I love it. I love it.
Brings a lot to the community and to these calls. So I appreciate it, Chris. But yeah, I'll ask the last question here, and then we'll wrap up. So we got our next speaker coming on in 2 minutes. But when it comes to sort of similar to Chris's question, is if you had to pick like your top 3 locations where like, man, if I could get somebody in X, Y, Z, and they wouldn't have to do a lot of travel because the area is so busy as far as your jobs go, what would those 3 like metros be, would you say?
Yeah, I would say the state of Texas, right? It's when you think about it from a fleet perspective, it's the middle of the country. It's a big state. You've got vehicles that can go all directions. So Texas is just kind of a natural hub for a lot of the companies we work with. So I'd say Texas, honestly, Florida, another big state in the Southeast. If you look at that, how the population is distributed, most of the population outside of Canada or outside of California is east of the Rockies, right? So, and then I would say anywhere in kind of the Midwest, Ohio, Kansas City. We've got some folks in Denver. So yeah, if I had to pick, I'd say yeah, Texas, Florida, and then maybe somewhere in like the Atlanta area, so that you can kind of get like the Appalachian region.
So Texas, Florida, and Atlanta. Love it.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on and joining us today. I appreciate what you guys are doing at Elite, and bringing these job opportunities to our community. It means a lot. There's a lot of great people on this call. I know I think sort of spotlighted Chris, but there's a lot of qualified folks on this call that might be a good fit for this opportunity, especially for those of you who are getting towards the end of your wire here in SkillBridge. And you're like, man, I could use a 6-figure job that's sort of autonomous and show up and install cameras and help make our roads safer. So, hey, what I'm going to do is after the call, everybody, on your end of day surveys, if you are interested in connecting with Brady afterwards, let us know. we'll get that list over to him so that he can check over your Seven Eagle Connect profiles. And he's going to be actively in there recruiting. So go ahead and let us know so we can get your info over to him. Brady, thank you so much.